My name is Michael Burke, and today is June 18th. I'm interviewing Roz Blanck at the Max M. Fisher Federation Building in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan. This interview is being recorded as part of the Women's in Leadership Oral History Project. Roz, do you give permission to the Leonard and Simons Jewish Community Archives to publish, duplicate, or otherwise use this recording for educational purposes and for use as deemed appropriate by the archives?
I do.
Good, I'm glad. The Women's Philanthropy Department of the Jewish Federation has had several names throughout its history, including Women's Division and Women's Campaign and Education Department. For the purposes of this interview, the questions will refer to it by the current name, Women's Philanthropy, but you may use whatever name you're comfortable with. And me too, because I remember the Women's Division.
Yes,
in my
but
form.
it changed during the time I was president, so Women's Philanthropy is easy to come out of my mouth.
So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in Detroit
Yeah.
in December of 1952, and I lived with my grandmother and my parents, and then we moved to Oak Park in '54. This is a typical thing, and I lived
What part of the city did you were
on
you born in?
Sturtevant, so around Central and those things. I obviously don't remember that too much,
Yeah.
but then I lived in Oak Park till I was 16, and then Southfield, and the typical.
Oak Park High School?
No, that's when I moved to Southfield after junior high school, after Clinton. Then I went to Southfield Lathrop, where I
So my kids
graduated.
went to Southfield Lathrop.
No?
Yeah. How was religion observed in your family as a child in your household?
So I grew up in Oak Park, as I said, where everybody was Jewish. I remember I had one friend when I was in second grade. There was one girl that wasn't Jewish. That was so unusual. So Judaism was just part of my life. Everybody was Jewish. And my aunt lived on my block. My two other aunts lived a couple blocks away. We had chicken and brisket every Friday night. My mother lit candles. We, went to the high holidays services. My dad worked on Saturdays. We weren't Shomer Shabbos. So it was just part of my life, but it wasn't talked about that much. It was just there.
Where did you live in Oak Park?
On Gardner, south of 9.
I lived on Kenosha, south of 9.
Oh, really?
My first house as a married.
Oh, yeah,
as
that
a
was
married, as a married man.
So right.
What synagogue did you belong to?
B'nai David.
Okay.
We belonged to yeah.
What role did philanthropy play in your life growing up as a child?
Really not much. My parents, my dad worked really hard. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, part of my life, I think my dad worked 7 days a week.
What did he do?
He had an auto parts store.
Mm-hmm.
Just him and his mother, because his father passed away when I was 6 weeks old. So he and his mother had a small auto parts store. If they weren't there, then the store wasn't open. So, I can't remember the question. You better edit this. Philanthropy. So they weren't philanthropists. I mean, I think they gave a couple bucks here, but it wasn't talked about. It really wasn't part of my life growing up.
So what was the trigger for you? It's a little out of order, but since we're there,
okay,
that caused you to, consider philanthropy an important part of your life.
Okay, so I think it's being part of the community. I don't like calling it philanthropy or what I do philanthropy. I don't consider, even though everybody who gives some money, who gives back, is considered a philanthropist. That's why they changed the name to Women's Philanthropy. Although to me, I think it's just being part of the community. And so I went to Camp Tamarack as a kid. I was a candy striper at Sinai Hospital as a kid. A very stereotypical upbringing. I went to Hebrew school my whole life.
Which Hebrew school did you go to?
B'nai David. And but what really changed it is when I was in college, I was in the first cohort of Project Join, Jewish Occupational Interns from JVS. And that was an eye-opener to me. It was like, this is this mini government that's taking care of the Jewish people. In Project Join, you go to visit all the different agencies, and then you work. And I worked actually at Federation with Alan Candell in the planning department in those days, downtown, whatever it was on downtown.
163 Madison.
That's 163 Madison, that's it. And I learned a lot that summer, and it was fascinating to me. That changed my whole way, it changed my life, I think.
What agencies stuck out in your mind as you did because it was a unique project, and being able to go to each one of the agencies and learn about them, and so I'm curious, which were the ones that really resonated
Oh,
with
way
you?
back then?
Way back then.
Well, I think the whole Federation concept, I didn't understand the concept. Like I said, I had gone to Camp Tamarack, I had been a candy striper. When I was 12, 13, 14, did I have any idea that it really came together, that it was really like this Federation was as an umbrella organization, especially then more than today when each of the agencies are doing their own fundraising. Then the centrality of Federation was even more so. I was just fascinated by the whole concept, and still am. I love the concept of Federation and what it does for our community. I think it's a mini government. The agencies that I remember from those days, I definitely remember going to JVS. I remember Al Asher. I remember him talking to us. That's probably the one that really sticks out in my mind, because a lot of the agencies, this is 40-some years ago, combined are different, but JVS, I remember going there.
So when did Federation come onto your doorstep? When did you become involved with Federation? And what was the trigger there that you wanted to get involved with Federation?
I was asked. I'm sure, and I think that'll be a recurring theme for everything that I'll say. I was asked. I don't remember who asked me or why, but I'm a lawyer by degree. I came home from law school, and someone asked me to be on the board of what's now YAD, but it was it was YAD. Young Adult Division is now Next Gen.
Right.
So I don't remember. I just remember being on the board at the time.
And who were the leaders when you first got involved that were running the engine? Do you remember them?
Not really. I knew, a little bit. I knew of the names, and, if you name them, I'll go, oh, yeah, oh, yeah. It was a long time ago. So it was probably since 1978 or 79, those were. But I was just on the board, doing my thing. I remember Norman. I remember the Young Adult Division presidents, my friends Norman Beitner and Betsy Hewer was really involved, and at that time David Wallace. It might have even been David Wallace that asked me to be on the board. And
so what were the things that you became involved in immediately back then? Can you remember?
No. No, I can't. I remember being on the board. That's about what I remember. And then I remember maybe a few years after that, Herschel Sandberg, who was my doctor, asked me to be on the board of Jewish Apartments and Services, which was the first board I ever was on, and I loved it. I didn't realize how much I would love being at meetings, and which I do. I always learn from it and meet people, and that was the first board. Well, I guess I was on the Young Adult Division board, but that was the first agency board I had been on.
And tell me about the other agencies along the way that you've served.
I've been on a lot of agency
Well,
boards, and I like it, and I think it all goes, it's one big circle, and we're all one big family, one big community. I was on Jewish Apartments and Services for many years. I was on Jewish Vocational Service, or JVS, they don't call it Jewish Vocational Service anymore. And I was on there 20 years ago when I couldn't go to morning meetings or because I had kids at home, and I'm now on it again when I'm able to go to more meetings. Great agency. And I was on Tamarack for a while. I've been on Jewish Family Service. I don't know what other agencies are there. There's a lot more. I have not been on any of the in the schools, and that's a lot of it. Jewish Community Relations Council, I've been on that. I've been on a lot of them, which is really good because I sort of can see the whole thing, I think.
Yeah, let me ask you a question that's not in, you've been very involved, really very community-wide, and I think, you're not unique, but you are unique. Do you have a sense that other people, kind of the every person, understand the Federation concept that you suggested at the beginning? Until you went through the join program, you really didn't understand the connection. Do you think that the women particularly, because that's what we're talking, understand the federated concept, and are we being successful in helping them to understand that concept?
I think that you constantly have to do it. The type of programs that we had 40 years ago or 30 years ago from women's philanthropy till now are sort of the same. You want to keep educating and engaging women. So I think it's not something you inherently understand what the federation system is, and all the different programs, by whatever name you want to call that, Community Connections or Jewish Working Women's Network, or used to be BNP, all those things, when they have a new woman there, a new person, and we'll talk about women versus not women, a new person, it's not inherent. You have to learn it. And I think most people in our community don't understand what federation is. And I think it's so important. I mean, I really think that I don't know how you get to each person, but I think instead of whatever 12,000, 13,000 people giving to federation, we have a community of 60-some thousand. We should have 30,000 people giving. I mean, or more. I think every adult should be giving to federation.
Do you think women's philanthropy does a good job in educating the people who they serve in the community?
Educating the people who they serve?
Yeah.
Are you talking about the women in the community,
The women
who donate and get
the
educated?
women in the community.
I think that's a theme, and I think they try. And I think the women who come and do the community connections or whatever the engagement programs are do learn. And I think they get a much better idea. And I think it's necessary, but there's always new women coming up. There's always women. You just have to keep going and going and going. Keep trying to do it. Yes.
What about the rest of the federation? How do you grade them and their ability to educate the community?
I think these engagement things really, really work. So I don't know, but I know there's other engagement things. I know Next Gen has engagement things. I know there's this affinities thing that has engagement things. I think all these engagement things where you're exposed to really what our community does works. Some people after seeing it aren't interested, but some people are. What I found was that the leadership, not everybody who came to these engagement things became leaders, but almost all leaders went to one of these engagement things. Decades ago, I was in a room filled with past presidents, and they were talking about how they got involved. Everyone got involved, almost everyone got involved, by doing one of those engagement things first, and learning about the breadth and the depth of what our community does. So, yeah, I think it's really necessary.
And you think that's true for the men too?
First of all, I think we're people. I mean, I've never been one to think there should be women or not women. And when I became president of Women's Philanthropy, I had to figure out a reason why I thought women's philanthropy was still good as a standalone. Is it okay that I'm going off script?
No,
So,
I'm going off script too.
is it okay that I'm talking this way?
Absolutely.
And what I truly believe now is that women's philanthropy engages more women than general federation. It's more, they don't have as many programs, they can't reach as many people. It's just not, so the women's philanthropy is necessary. There's got a history. I'm very big into history and tradition, and so they have a tradition of women's philanthropy. It's proven that if you have two separate, if you get from the women and the men and you have a women's campaign, in total you're going to raise more money, so that's really important. And I also think that women's philanthropy, I know it provided for me, but a platform, whatever the word is called now, a platform from which I could learn all these skills that maybe I have developed over the course of the years. And regular federation wouldn't have. I'm not one of those people that they wouldn't have latched on to me a regular federation. They wouldn't, that's just me. I don't have the background. I wasn't giving to the degree that, people look for. And I think women's philanthropy is a very more easily entry point for becoming involved in the community and gathering those kind of skills.
So do you think that the general community can learn some lessons from women's philanthropy to make us a better federation?
I think they're doing that with the affinities groups and with these other things that I don't really know about. You have to engage, people have to know what you're doing, and you have to learn about it. It's fascinating what federation does.
Yeah. Let's talk about your family just for a moment. Is your husband involved in federation activity at all?
No, because that's just not his nature. But he has, I was thinking about when I was reading the thing, I don't know if it wasn't for me that he would be a donor to the degree that he is today.
Mm-hmm. And what did your family think as you became more and more involved in federation? How did that resonate?
With my personal family?
Of course.
they want me at their beck and call. So, they didn't love it. And I didn't go to meetings at night anymore. I didn't go to meetings, I was around for my family. And that was why volunteering, I think volunteering is great, because when my kids were little, or when they were growing up, I could be with them. So my day was from 10 to 2 or 10 to 3, and that's when I could go to meetings. I would never go on a board that had night meetings, because then, I wasn't available for them. I used to go, I had to come late, go early. It was just ridiculous. So for me, volunteering from 10 to 3 was a great thing for me to keep busy and stimulated. And
So talk about, the whole educational process. We've talked about it. What role did you play in helping to educate women's philanthropy in specific, and maybe a broader base from all of the involvement that you've had with other agencies?
I've been on a lot of committees that do that. So maybe, I don't think I spearheaded that much, but I was on the committees to do it. Community Connections may have come, I might have been the head of it at the beginning of that, where they, had it where you go through the different agencies, like I said. They have, I helped with the penny harvest, what that is, so that's one of the things that I sort of started with. I did start with friends of mine, and I thought that really taught kids how to look at giving money and the collective, as opposed, the collective's really important to me, and I think that's what I want people to learn. So the penny harvest part of it, and different agencies, it's nothing tremendous that I know of.
What positions did you hold in women's philanthropy over the years?
Probably everything.
Well, but let's...
I was on committees.
Yeah.
I was the co-chair of committees. I was a socio-co-chair of committees. I mean, you're talking about 30 years, so I was on lots. I mean, in women's philanthropy, I probably did, over the course of the years, I probably did most everything.
Yeah, so what caused you to want to be president?
I never wanted to be president. I never aspired to be president. I saw that on the question. I never even thought of it, and I think that was probably the best for me. Susie Pappas, for several years, would ask me, are you interested in being president? I go, I'm not going to be president. I don't give enough money. I just don't have the ability. I can't stand talking in front of people. And for years she would say this. And then by the time that I was asked, I was thrilled that I was asked, I guess. But it's not like there was something that I aspired to be or that I set myself up to do that.
So describe before you were president, you were chair of the campaign. Mm-hmm. So describe your duties as chair of the campaign. What were the important things to you when you were the chair? This is a two-part question I don't usually ask. And then kind of go into the duties that you had when you were president, and what were some of the things that you particularly focused on in both of those roles?
Well, I think when you become associate campaign chair, and then you become campaign chair, and then you become president, is the normal course. Nothing guaranteed when they say that, but that is like the normal course of what happens. And you really work with a team. So before me was Lisa Lease, and before that Marcy, and I met with them several times a week, for years. And they are wonderful, wonderful community leaders, as you know. And they are just, they both have so many strengths, but they're different. And it was just a pleasure to learn so much from them. So it's really teamwork, and you work a lot with your professional. And as campaign chair, what do you try to get as much money from as many people as you can? And what I wanted to do, which I hope to still be able to do, is try to get new donors. I mean, my goal is to get as many donors as I could. But as you're meeting and you're doing this fundraiser and you're doing this telethon, the years go by fast and your time's up. So I think we got some new donors. We had some initiatives, but that's hard.
Was there anything that was particularly successful, Roz, when you were trying to broaden the base?
I think the first time we had this thing called, I don't know, maybe it was 2 and Through or something. You find 2 new donors, and then you don't have to find 2 more donors. And I thought, and I don't know if that's the one that worked or the one and done. I mean, we tried all these different ways. And the truth of the matter is, it's not easy to get money. And today, over the course of the last 40 years, you have telethons, even though that's still the best way of doing who answers the phone? I mean, I used to go to telethons and 80% of the people would answer their phone and talk to you and you got the money. Now, if you can sit there for 3 hours, if 2 people answer the phone, you're lucky, you know? It's just a very different way. How to reach people with different ways of communication is making it more difficult, I think.
Do you find the competition is stiffer now than it was when you first started from other agencies, even our own family of agencies?
Well, that's
but,
where
but beyond that.
Well, that's what I was saying. I think at the beginning, from my position, which wasn't really in the know, from what I understand is that the agencies really couldn't do their own fundraising.
Right.
It was very limited. So I think it was Edith Jack used to call it the supremacy of the campaign. Everything was the supremacy of the campaign. And so the other agencies, there wasn't the same kind of competition at all. And now each agency, and I've been told, and I'm sure it's true, that in the aggregate, doing it the way it's being done now, you raise more money for the community, which is really important. But it is causing competition, and if you don't know what Federation is as opposed to Jewish Family Service, the Jewish Family Service is the safety net of the community, then why wouldn't you give directly to Jewish Family Service and not give to Federation or not as much to Federation? And you have to really kind of understand the whole system in order to understand how important Federation is.
Well, it seems to me the women's philanthropy does that, maybe not perfect, but better than most entities in our family. And so sort of go from where we were to being the president, and what were your priorities when you became president of women's philanthropy?
First of all, those 2 years went by so fast, so it's hard to, but the same kind of thing. You want to, it's twofold. You want to educate as many women as you can, so engage more than educate. Well, I guess educate and engage go hand in hand, because you're going to educate some and educate a lot, and from that you're going to hopefully engage some. And then to the end is Federation does raise dollars. I mean, it took me probably 20 years of all in Federation to realize that Federation is the fundraising organization. That's what it does. That's the whole purpose. So the education is so you understand why the dollars are important and why you should give. They used to say, which resonated with me, is that it's the Jewish government. It's like your taxes. And now taxes have a dirty word, but I don't think so. The taxes pay for the streets and the fire and things that you need. And Federation provides for things that we have as a Jewish community, whether you, God forbid, need some of the services that, or God forbid, or that you go into the Jewish Center. We have a vibrant Jewish Center. You send your kids to Camp Tamarack. You go tomorrow to the Israel at 70. That wouldn't be without Federation. For all the agencies wouldn't be what they are today without Federation.
Do you think the agencies understand that?
Some more, some less. I mean, some more. I've sat on many, many allocation committees, and it's been over the course of these decades, and it's been very interesting. And I think that probably is the most interesting thing. As I became on the Planning and Allocation Steering Committee, that was probably the most interesting meetings that I've gone to. Some more or less, and it's all dealing with people, and it's all numbers. There's never going to be enough money to fund all the needs, and it's an interesting system, but it kind of works.
So you just mentioned Marcy and Lisa as people that you really met with to help with your education. Were there any others who particularly stand out to you as mentors and people who've helped kind of create and mold you as a leader in the community?
I don't think anyone really took me under their wing to do that. I mean, Florine Marks has said some things to me when she was talking about people being afraid to speak up, and then she came up afterwards and she said, "I'm talking to you, Roz," which made me feel wonderful. But a lot of the women that came before me, because if you remember 40 years ago, there was all these old women who are no longer here with us. And their stories and what they did, that's the kind of thing I wanted to do, because I like doing it selfishly. I like going to meetings. I like helping people. I like raising, I don't love raising money, but I like the whole system, and I like being part of the community. So, I do remember Tilly Brandwine and Edith Jackier and all those people who came before. I didn't know them personally, and they probably didn't know me. But just to listen to them speak and hear what they were doing is very, Penny Blumenstein, I mean, it's very inspirational. Nancy Grossfeld, all of them, they're very inspirational people.
So let me ask you a question related to that. It's maybe a little out of order, but I'm not concerned. What's your sense about the security of not only the Federation, but the Women's Department in terms of current and future leadership? Are you comfortable that there is a cadre of people moving into roles that are going to do well by us as a community?
I think as a community, well, first of all, when you're done being president of Women's Philanthropy, the past presidents all told me, when you're done, you leave it to the next person. So since it's been only 2 years, but I'm not as involved in women's philanthropy as I had been before. I do think there's women coming up that are very interested, and I think, so women's philanthropy, I do think has a community, the community as a whole, I think there's so many programs going on in our community that are really raising knowledgeable Jewish people that are interested. I mean, Wexner's here this year, in the last year, and I think that's really important. And then there's something, I can't remember who else, another program that was brought here. There's a lot of programs coming to Detroit, and I think those are wonderful training grounds. So I think our Jewish community is going to be well served in the future.
Do you think that the women are getting their due as it relates to some of these leadership programs? Are they being well represented in your opinion?
Okay, so this is my honest opinion.
That's
I
what I'm
think
looking
that
for.
women's philanthropy, at least as of 2 years ago, and it hopefully has changed, I think it was treated as its own entity and not part of general. We weren't included in, and then we started becoming included in the campaign meetings, the general campaign. Why we weren't, I don't know. And for the past several years, there's many women who come up through Grossfeld, or mainly Grossfeld, and I would be seeing them at on other boards that I served at. I went on a Grossfeld meeting, now I'm on this board. Which is wonderful, but they don't. But I've heard the phrase so many times, we're not women's philanthropy people. What does that mean? To me, if you're a woman and you're in this community, you're women's philanthropy. I don't see, there shouldn't be a disconnect between coming up through Grossfeld or being part of women's philanthropy. So I don't think necessarily, well, this year maybe, I think Leah did more to include women who are part of women's philanthropy or active in women's philanthropy on the board and in other committees and other organizations within our community, which I think is really important.
Well, you talked about a disconnect. Is there something that we should be doing more to connect women to the, women always took pride in, I can speak because I was at Federation before you were born almost.
No, I'm sure the same time.
But women took pride in, the separation, the women's, department. And, there is a sense now of, the collective. And I'm just wondering if you can articulate some of the things that we should and might be doing to merge women's philanthropy and the community at large, because after all, we are one,
I think that all the women, and this is what I never had time to, the women who are serving on all these boards within our community, and the women who are participating in these leadership things through the affinities group, through Next Gen, they should be told more about women's philanthropy, what is available through women's philanthropy, that we're one thing. When we have, and maybe this year they did, but when we have something, that they're as much a part of women's philanthropy as someone who goes to the meetings and are on the committee of women's philanthropy, that you don't have to be on the women's philanthropy committee at noon or 11 o'clock planning a party to be part of women's philanthropy. We're one community. So I think that this, at least as of 2 years ago, it didn't have this culture. I'm not a women's philanthropy person. I didn't come up through the ranks that way. And I don't like that whole culture if that's what it is. It should be every woman's part of women's philanthropy.
But it's kind of interesting what you say, because I serve on a few boards as well, and women are being more and more and better represented on those boards in the community. And it would seem to me, if you want to connect what you've exactly articulated, getting people to understand the responsibility of a board person to the community at large and to women's philanthropy could be a really great project for the community.
Well, they did try. I mean, that's when we tried to get community. It's hard because it's a lot of time, but when we did Community Connections, which is our engagement program, we looked at the boards of all the different agencies to try to get women who are on those boards to come to Women's Philanthropy, and it happened.
Yeah, it was successful?
I think it's successful, and I think there's also was a program that doesn't exist anymore, where we took Women's Philanthropy and we had liaisons called Link, where it was Lisa's idea, and they were on the boards too. And I thought, and I still think, that's a program we should bring back, because if you're on Women's Philanthropy, that's a way of learning from the other, not other side, but another aspect of the community. Just like you said, is there an adversarial relationship between, you see both sides, and you understand how it works as a whole. So I think that's really important. And if you look at these boards that you're on, and how do the women get on that board? What are they involved in before they're on the board? And that's something to just look at.
Yeah, good point. We talked about the partnership between the women and the general community, but there's another partnership out there too. It's the volunteer to professional. So maybe you can speak to me about the people that you've worked with and the role you think volunteers play in helping to move the agenda forward, and who stands out to you particularly, Roz?
Okay, well, first let's go back to the role of the volunteer, and I
Okay.
think that's where Women's Philanthropy is different than the Federation as a whole, because Women's Philanthropy, I've always thought, is more, it's not hands-on, that's not the right word, but affords you more, like we talked about, the ability to use your skills and to learn more skills. And there's time to do that, whereas in general, they don't. You're not coming to Federation and going to an allocation committee meeting and doing skills building for you. So I think Women's Philanthropy, if you want to build your skills, and whether you want to take it back and go be the president of your kid's PTO, or work at Kadima or Jewish Family Service, that's where Women's Philanthropy can do something. And I think, I know we talked about it, I'm sure we had some of those skill building kinds of things, but I think that's where Women's Philanthropy can excel. So that's, in terms of skill building and volunteerism, I think it's important. I don't know if this is, actually I've said this a few times and it never happened, but if somebody within Women's Philanthropy has a good idea, Women's Philanthropy should be an enabler in the good sense of the term. Not that they should spend all their time doing it, resources. If it doesn't use resources, they can help. And I think the two things that I did, or that stand out is, the penny harvest part, which was my idea. And I remember somebody saying, if you do it, that's fine. It was part of Tzedakah experience, and I got on the phone and I called all these places and got bags and schools and parent liaisons, and that's where I learned, and it was fun. And if it didn't work out, it didn't work out, but it happened to work out. And I would never have started or been involved with Bookstock if I hadn't done that. And Bookstock, the same thing. The other organizations all help. Without that, there would be no Bookstock.
Right.
So I think Women's Philanthropy afforded me those opportunities, and I think that it should afford those for other women as well. I think it shouldn't be so. And it depends. I don't know who's come with ideas, but I think it should be known for that. You have an idea, you want it, let's see what we can do to help each other. And that's what I think Women's Philanthropy can do. I've worked with wonderful professionals over the years. I mean, like I said, it's been 40 years. I've worked with, Amy, who's working now, could not be any better. She really wants to work with you and help you and, anything you want, Before that, I worked with Jennifer Levine, and they switched, and they have very different styles, just like everybody else. I love Jennifer. She's very passionate. She's very knowledgeable. Before that, Jennifer Noparstak, which was right before when I said I would work, and I like her as a person. She's a lot more forceful, and she's, I don't know if we worked together throughout those 5 years, she probably would have, everybody works differently, but personally, I love her. I've worked with a lot. Marion Friedman was wonderful. I think Cheryl Geyer at the time maybe was a professional. It was like lots and lots of them. And at the beginning of the first ones, did I really know them? No. They were the professionals, and I was on a committee.
So speak to the partnership. You've talked about wonderful people. Mm-hmm. I share your your joy in that. But how would you describe kind of the ideal partnership, knowing that there are different personalities between the volunteer and the professional?
For women's, I can't.
No, we're talking about women's.
Women's philanthropy.
Yeah.
I think it's worked out. I mean, the different personalities. I think everybody. The one thing, I think it was Lisa who said that, but maybe Marcy and Lisa before I became president. They said every president has to make it their own. You have to be yourself and make it your own. So I think that every director of women's philanthropy has to make it her own, and they will. It's always been a her so far, and they will deal with, not deal with, but work with the it's all relationship building, and every group has different relationships, and it always works out. I mean, I haven't for many years been many years when I was nothing heard bad things about a professional. We really have wonderful people who work here.
Where does women philanthropy fit into your priorities of things that have been important to you as a volunteer?
The most. Yeah, I've met more people, I've become more involved, I've learned more, I felt good about it, and that's just all about me. But as I was saying about I believe in the federation system, truly believe in the federation system, and I've learned that through women's philanthropy.
Well, so has women's philanthropy provided the impetus for you to get involved in other agencies, or is it vice versa, or is it a combination of both? And does women's philanthropy can they play an important role as that kind of a tool to help the community broaden and strengthen?
I think it should. That's what I've been saying. I think it should, and I think that's where its strength is at. And I think it was probably both. Like I said, Dr. Sandberg asked me to go on the Jewish Apartments Board, and I was on this board, and I could see that you get a better feeling for the whole thing when you are on different, you just learn from everything you're involved in.
So how did Dr. Sandberg hear about you? Was it?
I was a patient. I bet you that's how he heard about me. I mean, I don't know what went on in the nominating committee. Nominating committees are who's on the committee and who knows you. I'm on the Jewish Fund Board now, and Jim Bellinson called me, who I really didn't know, and he asked me, and I was shocked. I always wanted to be on the Jewish Fund Board, but I didn't think I would ever be, or maybe not for 10, 20 years down the road. And when he called me, I was a little shocked, and I said, "You nominated me, didn't you?" He doesn't know me, but I met Cindy Eggleton, who started this nonprofit Brilliant Detroit with him, and she has these wonderful rose-colored glasses that I'm sure she and I know she talked about me, and that's why Jim nominated me, and that's why I'm on it now, which I'm very honored to be. But nominating committees are like that. It's who's in the room. It's a lot of luck.
Yeah. And do you feel that the Women's Philanthropy Program has interacted reasonably effectively with the community at large, and as we've moved forward?
I think better than other parts of Federation, because you do have all these programs where you go into the different agencies and learn about them.
And how's the women's philanthropy changed in your estimation since you first started to where it is today, just a couple of years after your presidency?
Yeah. I think, as I said, I think the goals are still the same. I think the goals are to raise educated, engaged members of our community in order to raise the dollars for the needs that we have. And I think so I don't think it's changed much. I think you're reinventing. I think what used to be Business and Professional is now the Jewish Working Women's Network. It's the same thing. It's to learn about Federation, it's to network, and it's ultimately to, get an appreciation for our community and raise the dollars that are needed to make it work.
And do you think there is and there should be a continued role for women's philanthropy in our community agenda? Does it play an important role in your estimation?
I do. I really do. And when I was president, it was like I had to talk about that, and I had to think about that. So what I said to you about before, it's an easier entry point for people. You learn more. Can learn more about the community. I think it serves that point, and I think there's a role for it there. I think when you're dealing with if there wasn't a women's philanthropy, I don't think that I wouldn't have been afforded these positions and opportunities that I have been.
This question isn't on the agenda, but it seems like a good question. What is the relationship, or what should the relationship be between women's philanthropy and Next Gen in terms of, strengthening the community and the natural, the nature of people funneling in appropriate ways?
This has been, I'm telling you, that conversation has been ongoing for 30 years. I mean, I remember sitting at United Hebrew Schools, the exact same conversation. How do you get people from Yad to go into women's philanthropy? It's the same thing, and there's new people every time, and you just keep grappling with the same thing, and it's the same thing over and over again. So you will get some people involved, and you'll lose some people, and that's just the way it is, as people get involved in other things.
Why do you think it's important? We've talked about it, but I'll just kind of, that women's philanthropy have their own campaign. And it's separate and distinct from kind of the...
Because it does raise more money. I mean, that's what I've been told, and if you ultimately raise more money for our community, then it's important.
Do you think that the women's philanthropy...
And it really isn't separate. I mean, it's one pot.
Yeah.
So they call it that. It's one pot of money.
Well, you mentioned earlier kind of your husband, and he wouldn't be as involved philanthropically had you not been involved. Do you think that is true in other scenarios, that because of women's involvement, husbands and families are more philanthropic?
I would assume so. Isn't that what they say in Judaism? You teach a woman, you teach the family.
Yeah, that's what they say. Yeah.
So that's what they say, and I'm sure that I'm not the only one that's what it is. And I think in a lot of the cases, their spouses become more involved. They do it together as a couple. They do it together as a family, and that's, to me, the ultimate thing that you really want. You want your whole family engaged.
Do you find that your involvement in women's philanthropy and the community at large has had a positive impact on your children? And I want you to speak about your children just for a little bit.
So I have 3 children. My oldest lives in Denver. She's more like my husband. She's quieter, and I think she sees me do it, and she's not that involved. But maybe she will be one day, but not unless her personality changes. My son is extremely involved. He's part of Wexner. He's president-elect of Next Gen. He's more involved than I am. And years ago, they wanted him to say, for an article or something in the Jewish News, that it's because of me, that's why he does it. And he said, no. But the truth of the matter is he's a lot like me. He likes to be busy. He likes to learn. He likes to be involved. He likes to feel part of the community. And he's not doing it because of me, but he's doing it because he has the same kind of, likes as I do and interests as I do. And he's really learning a lot more than I am with this Wexner, and I'm so thrilled for him. And then I have a younger daughter who is 25 and lives in New York, and she's not involved, but who knows what I mean, they went to Tamarack, they see the community, they see what I've done, and they see how I've enjoyed it.
Well, so, for the record, if you want to, you got to at least name who they are.
Oh, so my oldest daughter is Lisa, and her last name's Ehrlich, and I have a 5-month-old granddaughter now in Denver. And my son is Roz Blanck, and he's getting married to Lauren Mondry this summer, which is wonderful, and hopefully she'll be involved with him, I hope. And my daughter Jenna lives in New York, and has a boyfriend from New York. Hopefully she'll come back here. Adam doesn't want to be the only child home when we get older.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Why is philanthropy so important to you, Roz?
I don't know, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if what I do is called philanthropy or is just being part of the community. The community is really important.
Why is community? You're right.
I feel part of it. It makes my life. I feel like I'm part of something greater than myself, and it brings me joy, and I feel that it brings me joy, and I think it brings everybody who's involved in joy. And if you can lift up as an individual, if I'm fortunate enough to be able to give of my time and whatever treasure I have to be able to lift up the community a little bit, but mostly it's good. When you're doing that, it's doing it for everybody, including yourself.
And what are your hopes for women's philanthropy in the coming years? If you had to articulate 2 or 3 things you'd like to see.
I'd like to see it more ingrained in Federation and more of an appreciation for the leadership skills and what the people involved have. and not have women say, I'm not part of women's philanthropy. I mean, I don't like that conversation at all. That's one. I'd like to see more women donating. I'd like to see, I'd like to see, more new gifts. I'd like to see an appreciation in the Jewish community as a whole of what Federation is, that everybody gives something. I don't care if it's $18, $10, but you should be a donor. I'd like to see those numbers go up. And I think in terms of engaging women, they're doing a wonderful job, and just do more of it.
So I'm going to ask one last question because it's not on our list anymore, but I think it's important that you say a word or two about what you feel the relationship is between the Women's Foundation and women's philanthropy.
Oh. So yesterday somebody asked me, what's the Lion of Judah and what does it mean? So that, is the $5,000 giving level, and you're giving more to the campaign. You can go to the Lion of Judah luncheon, you can go to the Lion of Judah conference, and which is all wonderful, and you're doing more for the community than every dollar does something for the community, you know that. And then she asked me about the Jewish Women's Foundation, which is a pooling. It's more like a giving circle, and you learn about the agencies, and you give, and you make decisions of where your money's going. When you give to Federation, there are committees that make the decision because you don't know as much, and I believe in that. The Jewish Women's Foundation, I see, for me, and I've been part of it since pretty much the beginning, is a gift to myself. I learned a tremendous amount about sitting in that room, listening to how ideas are made, listening to what they're looking at, how they're giving. That's sort of like the icing on the cake. Federation provides for the community, and Jewish Women's Foundation supplies more. It's all good. They're all good. But they're two different things, and they're both important. But the most important is Federation.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else that we might have missed that you would like to suggest?
No, I said just make me look young and articulate. That's fine.
Well, you're both.
Oh, no, I'm not. But thank you.